Hello and welcome to episode 136 of the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast. My name's Annabel Bateman. I'm the host of the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast, and today I'm going to be giving you a bit of the ups and downs of the last 4 months, 4 or 5 months of my own personal health. I'm going to tell you how I've managed to lose 9 kilos and regain 6 of them. I'm going to talk to you about my experience of doing 3 rounds of the fasting mimicking diet. Now, the fasting mimicking diet is of course, if you've been listening for a while, the previous episode, 135, is all about that, where I'm talking with Renee Fitton from Prolon. So you'll pick up little bits, but if you're not sure what that is, go back and listen to that episode. Essentially, I've done that over the last few months and had some ups and downs with it that I want to share with you. I do try to be transparent on this show about my own health journey. What I've found is that I guess when things are going well, it's much easier to share. When things aren't going so well, I find it harder to share in the moment. I like to be transparent in certainly overall, and that's part of why I'm doing this episode. I think it is important, but I also have to, I guess, just honor myself in that I don't think it's always appropriate to share the downs in the middle of the downs, because you just don't know where things are going. And I guess when things aren't going great, it's sometimes just not having the energy to even share or knowing how to express it. So if you hear me go quiet, or if you notice that I go quiet, sometimes that is because I'm just dealing with my own stuff, and I'm not one of these people that likes to dump on everybody all the negative stuff. I like my shows and my content to be life-giving and encouraging and positive and practical. And so when things aren't going well, I don't like to just dump on you, all of that in the middle of it. But now that I'm sort of maybe coming out the other end, I do want to give you a bit of an update. So that's what this episode is going to be all about. Before we get into the podcast episode, I just want to remind you that this conversation, so anything I share or my guests share, is really just designed to inform and educate, get you thinking about your own health. It's not designed to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any disease, and in particular any thyroid disease. If as a result of this conversation, you want to get something checked out, please do that with your own health professional. That's where you should be getting your individualized medical advice from. Having said that, I really hope you enjoy this conversation and that it really helps support and encourage you on your thyroid journey. I want to give you a bit of context. So the last episode we recorded was in June, and that was with Renee Fitton from Prolon, all about the fasting mimicking diet, as I said. But prior to that, and I might have mentioned some of this in that episode, I can't quite remember, but Lee and I went on holidays in May for about 3 weeks, which was amazing. We went to Western Australia, which I highly recommend. It was very beautiful. And then when you've got time to sit and think on that holiday, I thought, you know what? I think I need to really lose a few kilos because I'm 51, or at that point I was almost 51. And, I'm mindful that a lot of women put on several kilos during that menopause period of time. And I was already at a manageable weight for me, but I didn't want to gain 5 kilos from where I was. I thought if I can lose 3, 4, 5 kilos, then that kind of gives me a bit of a buffer. That was my thinking. And I think that was probably healthy thinking. I'm certainly overweight technically, but my weight was been very stable up and down by 2 kilos for probably, a number of years. So I thought, while I'm on holidays, I've got a bit of time to think things through, do a bit of research. I've learned over time, and if you're a long-time listener, you'll have been through some of my ups and downs or weight loss journeys. And so I have learned over the last couple of years a lot about blood sugar and insulin resistance and insulin response. And you may have listened to episodes where I've talked about wearing a continuous glucose monitor, which I've found incredibly helpful. So if you haven't done that, I highly recommend doing maybe a month of wearing a continuous glucose monitor and just tracking your blood sugar response to foods and stresses and all of that. So I'd already have done that. So I know that for my body, it does not, at least at this stage of life, but probably ever really for as long as I can remember, it just doesn't deal with carbs very well. It does spike my blood sugar. Carbs do make me gain weight or stop me from losing weight. So I knew that already that being low carb was pretty key for any kind of weight loss success for me. Low, and I'm talking very low carb. And I know that from a thyroid perspective, that can be controversial. There are a number of people that do need carbs, for thyroid, to support thyroid health. But I have noticed for me that lower carb is better. So I was already kind of looking into low carb. I'd had a couple of friends look into the Primal BOD program and do that, and I'm sort of seeing some what looks like some good success with them. So I just started researching that. I found that it was very expensive, so I decided not to do that. I used AI and I created a bit of my own program. In amongst all of that reading and research, I also came across or was reminded of some work by Dr. Jack Kruse. That's Kruse, and I'm going to link in the show notes just probably one link to an article, and from there you can springboard off into lots of other things. Now, Dr. Jack Kruse I became aware of probably about a long time ago, 10, 12 years ago, when he was talking all about how important it is for morning light, for circadian rhythm, that kind of thing. Now, I think he's actually a neurosurgeon and very much into all the biohacking stuff. I knew that way back then he had been quite overweight and had lost a lot of weight. So I was following him probably early in my kind of health journey or my awakened health journey. But the last number of years I've stopped following him. I think he's a bit arrogant. He is a bit nutty. So I don't really follow him anymore, but I went back and because I think I came across his name in some stuff I was reading. And I actually think for what he was doing back then, and the article I'm going to links to back then, was really helpful. So anyway, I say that. So I mentioned Dr. Jack Kruse with a little caveat because I think he's gone a little bit off the rails. Not off the rails. He's just taught. You'll see when you read his stuff, he just writes all in like one paragraph. He just verbal dumps. He expects you to kind of have a reasonable level of understanding. He is a bit arrogant. For that reason, I have stopped following him. But what I came across of his was a leptin resistance program. Now, leptin is one of those hormones that is connected in with weight and fat. And so I thought, okay, I sort of fit the picture of someone that's, got an issue with leptin. And so I thought, right, I am going to do his leptin resistance program. And so essentially what that meant for me, and I'm happy to probably share this protocol if you want me to, I'll work that out. Maybe I'll pop that in the show notes too, or in the Let's Talk Thyroid Facebook group. But essentially it was like a 4 to 8 week reset. And in amongst that, I thought, you know what? I had forgotten all about the fasting mimicking diet, which I had done a couple of times over a couple of years. And I thought, you know what? After coming back from Western Australia, we've eaten all this beautiful food and drunk wine and all this stuff that I thought, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And then I'm going to, as a bit of a kickstart, and then I'm going to do this leptin resistance program for 4 to 8 weeks, something like that, however long it takes. I also knew that I was going to visit my parents at the end of June for my birthday, and that would probably upset any eating program. So that kind of gave me a bit of a window. So I got back from Western Australia. I did the fasting mimicking diet for 5 days. Now I did what which I've previously done, is the DIY version. So I've just made my own food and not bought the packet. I'll come back to that, or the box. And I have mentioned some of this in the last podcast episode. So I thought I'm going to do the fasting mimicking diet, then I'm going to do the leptin reset. So I did the fasting mimicking diet and didn't have any problem doing that. I think for me, when I'm in the right mindset, I've got very strong discipline and boundaries, and I can do pretty hard challenges when I'm in the right frame of mind to do that. So I did that. In the middle of while I'm doing that, I got an email from someone saying, would you like Renee Fitton as a guest on your podcast? She is all about the fasting mimicking diet. I'm like, yes, that would be amazing, because I'm in the middle of one at the moment. And so few weeks later, I think I interviewed Renee, by which point I'd completed the first week, but not decided to do any more. And originally my plan was just to do the 5 days, then the leptin reset, and that was it. I didn't think at that stage about doing multiple rounds of the fasting mimicking diet. And it's probably where I should have stopped. I should have just kept going with that, but I'll come back to that. I've done a bit of a summary of a table of my thyroid test results at the start of when I did the first fasting mimicking diet, which was started on the 19th of May. I got bloods done that day, so I know that that's what it was before I did the fasting mimicking diet, and I've had 2 lots of blood since then. And so I'm going to show you that soon. And I've also been tracking my weight, so you can see the ups and downs. So I did the fasting mimicking diet. Might as well bear all. I don't let anyone know my weight, but anyhow, I started at 82.1 kilograms. And by the end of that week, so 5-day fasting mimicking diet, I was down about 3 kilos, so to 78.85. I'm going to tell you my bloods on day 1, so my TSH was 2.4, which is all right. It's not optimal, but it's pretty good, 2.4. My T4 was 19, which is okay, and my T3 was 5, which is also okay. So my bloods were pretty good when I started. So started with pretty good blood, started at 82, came down 3 kilos in that 5 days. Obviously, I was expecting after that 5 days to regain, probably at least half of that, because realistically, it was a very calorie restricted diet. It wasn't really eating a normal diet, so I would have expected to regain weight. But interestingly, I actually kept losing weight as I went from the fasting mimicking diet to the leptin resistance program. I just consistently kept losing weight until I went to Orange to visit Mum and Dad. So I'm going to tell you what I did in that period, and then I'm going to come back to the things afterwards. So this was essentially my leptin reset based on Jack Cruz and other things I've done and know before. But the biggest change, and I think this is something you'll find when I'm going to come to the end of the things I'm going to keep doing, is to eat within 30 minutes, ideally, of waking. Now, if you're like me and you're on thyroid medication, and I've been on thyroid medication since I was 22, I have never eaten within 30 minutes of waking up, probably since, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's back when I was 22. Basically not since I was a teenager. But this was a very key part of the leptin resistance, the leptin reset, because what happens in the morning after you wake up is your insulin levels spike. Now, when your insulin levels spike, you can't burn any fat. And so eating, and there's different time frames that are recommended, but at least within an hour, but Jack Cruz recommended 30 minutes, helps to lower your insulin levels again, particularly when what you're eating is protein. You're not starting the day with sugar or with a shake or with fruit or, basically any carbs. So that for me, I knew, going back to my thinking while I was away, I knew that whatever I had to do to lose this weight, I had to do something different, because I had lost and regained the same 2 kilos up and down for years. So I knew I had to do something different. I thought, okay, I've never tried eating early because of my thyroid medication. So basically as I got these bloods, I had an appointment with my doctor, I think about a week after I did the bloods. And as I was starting this leptin reset, I was able just to check in with her, and she's like, yes, that probably would be good for you as long as you've had 30 minutes for your thyroid medication. Like, you need at least 30, but as long as you've got 30, then it would be okay to eat. And so that's what I've tried to do. And I've probably maintained that, although realistically I'm eating 45 to 60 minutes after waking. And particularly now in summer here in Queensland, it's light. I'm waking up very early, like 5:30. I don't really necessarily want to be eating at 6, but I'm still trying to eat a lot earlier than I used to, and ideally about that 30 minutes. I wake up, take my medication, 30 minutes, or somewhere between 30 and 60 minutes, eat breakfast, which is a high protein breakfast. Now, this is where what I read from Jack Kruse, he recommended at least 50 grams of protein. Not too much red meat in the morning because it can compete with the iron in the meat can compete with your thyroid medication. So I've done probably fairly consistently. The most common breakfast I've had has been turkey, mince and eggs, but I might do salmon. I have done a bit of steak or other mince, but basically a protein, pretty much a protein only, maybe a few greens type of breakfast. Part of it was about trying to increase the fish intake. So I probably still need to do a bit better job at that, but increasing my fish. Having dinner as early as possible. Now, I find that tricky because to me, want to eat as a family, and we've always eaten as a family. It's probably about 6:30. So ideally, I would probably eat dinner at 5, which I can do one day a week when I work a late shift at work, and I really don't really have lunch. I have a late lunch and an early dinner, and that's probably optimal for me. But family life doesn't really allow for that, which is fine. That's part of the compromise. But I'm trying to eat early and not too late, so that then allows a 12-hour fasting window really overnight, which is a typical kind of 12-hour fast, I guess. Other key is no snacking. So being really just eating the 3 meals a day and no snacking in between. And I'm a big snacker. I'm a nibbler while I'm cooking. For me, a very happy way of eating would be just to nibble on food all day. And so what I've realized about that insulin response, and when your insulin is spiked, it blocks you from burning fat, then I was probably setting myself up to almost never burn fat, which has probably been my life experience because of just my body was constantly getting food. So eating early, no snacking, eating dinner early. And on top of that, I guess it's maintaining the no grains, no gluten, no dairy, no sugars, alcohol, that I guess strict paleo, which I more or less follow anyway. Was also no coffee, and so I gave up coffee, which also then meant I was giving up the almond milk, which I think is probably good because realistically that almond milk that I use is not super clean. I have gone back to having some decaf, but initially I had no coffee, so no almond milk either. And it was also about not exercising. So again, because exercise can be a stress on the body, so this is about removing all the stresses. And so I really didn't do much exercise initially for that 6 to 8 weeks. So essentially that was the plan. And that's what I stuck to. Like I said, I did the first round of the fasting mimicking diet, lost a few kilos, kept losing weight. And essentially when I got to Orange for my birthday week and spend time with mum and dad, I'd lost another couple of kilos, so down to 76.95. Managed to regain a little bit of that because, of all this delicious food that mum cooks, and we're having birthday and alcohol and all those things that I hadn't been having. So that was a bit of a blip. But in amongst that, because I'd spoken to Renee Fitton by then, I had decided to give their I don't know if it's a recommendation, but their basic protocol for a normal person. And you'll know if you've listened to that podcast, I did raise with her my concerns about thyroid patients even doing any fasting mimicking diet. But their general protocol is that you do 3 rounds of the 5-day fast for 3 months. So 1 month 1, month 2, month 3, 5 days each month, and that's it. So I thought, well, I'm in pretty good health at the moment. I'd lost weight. I'd had a good time doing the first one. I thought, I think I'm going to give this a try. And I had bought a box of the pre-packaged fasting mimicking diet protocol from Prolon. I thought I'll give that a go. So I did give that a go. So I did round 2 from the 7th to the 11th of July. So it was a little bit, it was probably more like 6 weeks after the first one, but after I'd come back from Orange. I went from 78.6 to 75.4. I lost 3 kilos doing that. It seems that each round I've done within that 5 days, I've lost 3 kilos within that 5 days. And then I stayed around about that same weight of about 76 kilos for a while. I did get bloods done again on the 24th of July, and you can start to see here where things have started to shift. So on the 24th of July, so my weight was about 76.5, but my TSH had gone up to 4. So remember, before it was 2.4 in May, now it's 4. And 4 is, on the upper end of the normal, like this is the regular normal, like not the optimal, but the normal scale. So way out of optimal range. My T4 had come down to 18, which is not terrible, but it is down from 19. And my T3 was down to 4.5 from 5. So you can see things are starting to go a little bit awry. Now, I wonder if I had have stopped at round 2, whilst things were starting to go a little bit negative, it would have been probably easier to recover from there. Now, it's always hard to know in retrospect, isn't it? Maybe I should have never done rounds 2 and 3. I really think I shouldn't have done round 3. But round 2 wasn't great, but it could have just been that toxic dump. After having done the 2 rounds, maybe my body could have adjusted. But it didn't. I guess that's where I just kept going. I thought, well, I've done 2, I might as well do the 3rd. I wasn't feeling terrible, even though the bloods were starting to go a little bit, odd. So I did round 3 from the 4th to the 8th of August. Went from 76.55 kilos to 73.65. I don't think I've ever been 73 kilos, probably for at least 15 years. So I'm like cheering. I've lost weight. I've lost about 9 kilos. Not that I expected to stay there. I think I thought I could have had a new reset around 75, which I'd have been thrilled about. Still would be thrilled about. For me, I thought I was looking good. I think I was feeling good. It's hard to know sometimes if I just, was feeling good because felt like I was looking good. I thought, I'm onto something here. I'm really, for the first time, I'm actually losing weight. But what was really interesting was within a week after I'd finished that, I'd regained 2 kilos. Now, but previously, the previous 2 rounds, I probably gained a kilo and a half, but within a week, I'd gained 2 kilos. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, that's, that's probably okay. But within another week, I'd gained another 3. So within 2 weeks after the 3rd round, I'd gained 5 kilos. And I thought, something's not right here. Maybe I wasn't being as strict as I had been, with the first part of the leptin reset, but not enough to have gained 5 kilos in 2 weeks. Like, that's a lot. And I was starting to feel by then tired. I was like having little naps in the afternoon. I was still thinking, oh, well, it'll be all right. I've still lost weight. But when I look back and can really kind of be honest about it, I probably wasn't feeling that great. I was needing those rests. I wasn't very motivated. I spent a lot of time just sitting scrolling through Instagram reels and on social media, but not, normally I'm happy to record videos and, do podcasts and share things in the group and all that. But I think it just was lacking motivation. Also, over time, after that 3rd round, the carbs kept creeping in. And I think, when your thyroid's out and, low, you don't have the energy. And what you look for, your body looks for those quick fixes, doesn't it? So whilst those quick fixes for me aren't generally eating bowls of ice cream or, cakes, it's the keto treats or the paleo treats just crept back in. The sugar-free chocolate, the date and nut slice, those sorts of things were creeping in. So I probably was, therefore, because those treats tend to come as snacks, I was probably snacking a bit more. So it's this sort of tricky balance, isn't it? So I knew that I wasn't being as strict, but I didn't have the energy to be as strict. It was lacking energy to exercise. We've got a couple of sets of stairs in our house, and I can tell now when my thyroid levels aren't good because just walking to the top of the stairs, I can feel it in my legs. My bursitis has re-flared up in the last couple of months, or even in the last couple of weeks, actually, in my hip, which I'm really annoyed about because I've already had 2 lots of cortisone this year into my hip, and my right neck and shoulder, which has been it's just been difficult the last few, probably the last 3 or 4 months. And I think, well, your body doesn't, when your thyroid levels are out, your body doesn't recover in the same way that it can. It just doesn't have enough thyroid hormone. Because if you've heard me before, we know that every single cell in our body requires optimal thyroid hormone to function optimally. So surprise, surprise, when my thyroid isn't operating optimally, then things like muscle repair don't happen optimally. So these are the sorts of things: low libido, my period becoming irregular, although that's a bit of a harder thing to monitor because, I'm 51 and going through, so there is some perimenopausal things as well. My face has gone from, quite lean, lean for me, leaner, and then puffier and leaner and puffier. And so I can just see that in photos. So I thought, something's not right. I had another blood test on the 11th of September. So you think that's not that's a good way after that final round. I probably ideally should have had another blood test just after that third round at the beginning of August. I think if I had another blood test then, or even a week or two after, I could have probably nipped this in the bud a bit faster as well. But I wasn't due for blood tests. I guess that just was the way it sort of panned out on my regular blood test schedule. So the 11th of September, I had a blood test and things have gone, haywire. So this is where my TSH had shot up to 11. Now, remembering the normal range is up to 4. So 11, I've had TSHs much higher than 11 previously, much higher. 11, it hasn't been anywhere near like that for a long, long time. And so I knew this was the fasting. So TSH was 11, my T4 had come down to 16, and my T3 down to 3.6. Now that's pretty low for a T3. The good news was that I had no thyroid antibodies showing up at all, either the TPO or the TG, anti-TG antibodies. So hadn't had them tested for a while, so not quite sure when they went completely below the recorded range, but well, that's a good sign. So I'm going to cheer about that. No thyroid antibodies. Technically, Hashimoto's in remission, which is fantastic. And that's been, that's probably been more or less like that for the last few years, but it shifts in and out. So hooray for that. But the thyroid hormone levels are out of whack. So I was like, oh my gosh, how frustrating. So I had an appointment with my doctor a week after those blood tests. I've had to increase my thyroid medication. And I think, I'm recording this 3 weeks after I've increased my thyroid medication. So, we know that takes more like 4 to 6 weeks to really kind of have an impact. I think I'm starting to feel a little bit more energy. I'm starting to feel a bit more myself again. And these are so subtle. Like as Lee was saying, he said, your body has to be so finely tuned. And I think that's often the case. It's not like, whilst I was fatigued, it's not like I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And honestly, it wasn't like I was having hours of sleep. Like I still pretty much just press on and do things. It's really finely tuned. And I think sometimes when you have the blood, get your bloods, and you think it kind of gives me permission to go, no, actually you weren't feeling that great, Annabel. You actually do need to kind of slow down and look after yourself a bit. So that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks is I've increased my thyroid medication. I've been focusing on liver support because, sometimes I'm just feel like I want to facepalm myself because doing the fasting mimicking diet is all about cellular health and cellular regeneration, letting all the unhealthy things die off. Now, what I should have, because I should have known, should have remembered, should have realized that is a detoxification process which requires really good liver detoxification. Now, my liver is always under pressure because I don't have a gallbladder. Maybe you don't have a gallbladder either. Lots of people with Hashimoto's have lost their gallbladders or had them removed. I've done an episode on gallbladder actually a while ago, so go back and dig through that if you know you've got an issue with gallbladder or have had your gallbladder removed. But I know that my liver requires extra support. But somehow in amongst all of the fasting, and I just hadn't really clicked that, oh, Annabel, you've really got to make sure that you're supporting your liver through this. And so what my doctor thinks is that all this fasting has been, yes, too much. Body has done this massive kind of toxic dump, which theoretically is good, right? But I have to have the processes in the body to actually detoxify that, and otherwise it all just gets stuck in my system, and which is what has happened. So some of the things that I'm doing to support my liver is I've got a few different liver support supplements that I'm taking to help with those detoxification pathways. I am trying to increase my greens. And what else am I doing? Doing some juicing, which I haven't done for a while. And from a blood sugar perspective, I don't love to juice, but I figure it's only for a season. And so that's things like beetroot apparently is really good for detoxification. So I've been making a juice that's got beetroot, carrot, apple, lemon, ginger, turmeric. And actually, I've got to make another batch. I've just made up a batch and then just had, I don't know, half a cup maybe, a couple of big mouthfuls every day or every couple of days. Usually I'll have that after breakfast, so after I've had the protein, so that it's not just spiking my blood sugar from the get-go. And a problem with having a juice for me, anything sweet, is it makes me want other sweet things. So I'm not intending on doing the juicing thing for too long, but I am taking on board what my doctors said to help support my liver detox. So there we go. That was my last few months and my journey of the fasting mimicking diet and what's that done in terms of weight loss and thyroid health. And I think have been feeling for a while it has been really important for me to share, because I've always known that fasting can be very tricky for us thyroid patients. We do have very finely tuned bodies. The thyroid is super sensitive and fasting is a stressor. Now, I thought, oh, I'm doing pretty well. I can handle this. 1 round is good. 2 rounds is okay. 3 rounds must be better. And it just wasn't. And so my cautions that I talked about in the beginning of the last episode with Renee, I think really did apply to me too, as much as I thought I could probably get away with pushing myself to do those extra rounds of fasting. So please, I feel like in a sense I've got a responsibility to share my experience, because we're all our own experiment of one. I certainly have never on this show said to you to do what I do, but I wanted to be transparent around the impact that it's had on me, good and bad. Okay, so the bit of the upshot for me, the lessons I've learned, I've been making some notes here. If I could go back and do it all again, I'd have still done the first round, but I would have stopped there, because I think that was a good kickstart. I think I've done it like that previously, and it's been helpful each time I've done it previously. I think my body just was too much to do it more. So I should have just done the one. I think I've certainly had another reminder lesson in just how finely tuned my body is, and probably yours too. It doesn't take a lot. Like it's just very, very small little tweaks. It's just, I don't even know how to say it. It's just finely tuned. What else? I'm still down 3 kilos, so that's good. So I think I'm kind of back to where I was in the beginning of June in terms of weight, but I feel like I've stopped gaining weight, like that initial kind of after round 3, and I'm just gaining. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is all going to be undone. I have maintained a 3 kilo weight loss from the beginning of the year. It's a little bit more than that. Oh, not beginning of the year, but the beginning of this process. So I think 3 kilos is 3 kilos, right? That's more than I'd lost previously. Before I'd only up and down like 2 kilos. So now I think, okay, if I could just, when my thyroid levels are back to normal, I think some of the things that I've found really helpful that I know do actually work for me, the eating early, the high protein breakfast, not snacking, low carb. They're the things that I need to keep going as part of my regular lifestyle. And then I think my body probably could be set up to lose 2 more kilos, then I've lost my 5 kilos, and hopefully don't put it all back on with all the menopausal stuff, but that's given me that buffer. Well, hopefully then will have given me that buffer that I was looking for way back in May when I started this process. So the other thing that I have found helpful, which I think my views have changed on this over the years, and I think, again, this is an individual thing, but I have been weighing myself close to every day. Not every day, but most days. And actually that's given me accountability. It's also helped me to see the fluctuations that just go up and down normally. And so I think that gives me more of an accurate perspective on my weight. It has given me also a bit of a warning when things have been going up to go, oh, hold on a minute, something's not right here. And both, so I think it's been a good guide. I think more or less I've been able to do that without lots of negative self-talk. And that's probably why, if you've been around for a while and done any of my 30-day paleo challenges, you'll know that I usually don't recommend you weigh yourself during that, because that program really is about changing diet habits and mindset. And if you've been in this negative cycle of weighing yourself all the time, and that's been a negative cycle, then you do need a break from that. So I don't say this is a recommendation for everyone, but at the point that I'm at, I have found it actually helpful to be a bit more in tune with what's going on. It's probably held me a bit more accountable. So that's been, good. And I've more or less been able to just see that as an interesting observation rather than attaching any kind of self-worth or lack of that to a number on the scale. So what's next for my health is, I've got to keep supporting that liver. Like I said to you before, I'm going to try to maintain that eating early, high protein breakfast, no snacking, and eating early if I can. I'll be getting my bloods rechecked in a few weeks, just to see how that increase in medication's going and all the other liver detox things are going. So keeping a close eye on my blood tests. So that is it. And look, I've got to say, probably part of that too is not putting too much pressure on myself with the podcast. When I went back to work 3 days a week, which is nearly 2 years ago now, I did have to reshift the way I thought about the podcast, because if you've been around for a long, long time, you'll have known, this podcast has been going for over 5 years. It started weekly, then it went to fortnightly, and that I maintained that fortnightly schedule for a couple of years, and I really liked that regular schedule, but that's when I was working on it close to full time. So when I went back to work 3 days a week, after Lee's had a big fire in his business, I knew that I couldn't maintain that same pace, and I haven't maintained that pace. And I've really felt just to hold it with a bit of an open hand. And when I've got an episode, when I have a guest, I'll release that, but not to hold myself to a schedule. And I've been mindful that there actually hasn't been any podcast episodes for 4 months. It's the longest that's ever happened. So I wanted to get this episode out, but I'm not sure what's going to happen from here. Again, if I have topics I want to cover, I'll cover them. When guests come along, I'm happy, always happy to talk to them and share, learn myself and help us all keep learning on our journeys. I'm always happy to share people's personal thyroid stories. So if you've got a thyroid story, and you'll see mine's up and down all the time. So there's nothing about having a perfect thyroid story, but if you would like to share your thyroid story, then please send me a message. We can have a chat, see if that's appropriate for the show. So we'll just have to watch this space, see what happens. But again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of my thyroid community. Thank you for bearing with me as I'm on this journey alongside you as well. Just remember too that we all have our own unique stories. What's worked or not worked for me may be completely different for you. So we all our own experiment of one. We've all got to take that personal responsibility for our own health. We've all got to try different things. But let's do it alongside each other. Let's do it in community. Let's do it in a way that is encouraging of one another. And so if you want to be part of that in the Facebook group, do that. Please, if you're in the Facebook group, please share your own stories, your own ups and downs, ask any questions. I know I haven't been very regular in putting things in that group lately either. So, but I think we can all engage and all participate. So there we have it. Thank you, everyone. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. If you have enjoyed the content, or perhaps you're thinking, oh, my mum needs to hear this, or my sister or my bestie, I would love it if you would share this episode with them. That really just helps spread the positive and practical message of Let's Talk Thyroid and helps that broader thyroid community, our friends and family, to live well with their thyroid health. So you can just share the episode. If you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast, it's free. It's really helpful because then you'll be notified every time a new podcast comes out, and it just makes it much easier to find. There's usually a little subscribe button or a bell or follow often is the terminology. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be helpful. Of course, if you want to leave a review, even better, just a sentence or two about how the podcast has helped you. You can definitely connect with me via letstalkthyroid.com. That's where you'll find access to my book, my coaching, my freebies, and really everything that I offer in terms of thyroid support. So thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.